So we're saying function with input takes some io.Reader, right? R is traditional. Yeah. What does it return? Well, clearly, option, isn't it?
Yeah. So return our...
Aren't you glad we defined that name?
Yeah.
So we don't have to write it out in full. So it returns option, and here's the function. Is we can just return some function literal, which we're saving the user from writing. We can say return func takes the pointer to G and returns error, and here it is. What does it need to do? Well, all we need to do is set G.input.
So basically G input.
Yep.
Our
Is R. That's right.
Yeah.
And
Our reader.
No colon, in fact, because it's a struct
Oh yes,
field.
that's true. Yeah.
But that's easier than you'd think, isn't it? I guess it's just not that hard to do that. So apparently the compiler doesn't agree. What does it think is wrong with this? Can we hover over that? Oh, missing return. Yeah, fair enough.
That's true.
Yeah, this inner function literal says it returns error, but in fact it doesn't return anything. And that's right, it's the inner func that needs to return, isn't it? We already returned in this one.
Yeah, so return basically, no, returning option here, such as...
Yeah, we already returned the option in with input.
Here.
So the function that's missing a
function, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
This is the one that's missing a return, and just return nil is fine. Great. So with output now, I suggest, should be trivial.
Will be the same. Yeah. So let's copy. Put. Writer.
Yeah. So I must admit I struggled a bit when I first read about functional options, which I'm sure was in Dave Cheney's blog. Most good ideas.
Yes, that was my first contact was as well with Dave Cheney blog about this.
And you know, and that, I think that's forgivable, because if someone said to you, yeah, instead of passing a parameter, what you can do is you can pass a call to a function which returns a function, and then the function applies that function. You know, and I just wait, what? How many functions? Sounds like too many. And this even looks a little bit weird, but you know, when you look at the calling code, you know, when you look at the call to play game, which just says with input X, with output Y, that's beautifully simple. And that's, I don't mind it being a bit complicated on this side if it's really clear on the other side. That's worth it, isn't it? So this is great. We should be there almost, shouldn't we? I think we might.
We have with input, with output, we have options already. We have compiler is not complaining.
Yeah. We don't need to export that because no one else needs to use it.
No.
So this is great. We didn't even need to Google Golang functional options. Yes, we need to return something, that's right. Okay, test file looks angry still.
Signatures. We need to.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so we can no longer now just pass a buffer to display state. We need to do something different.
Okay. So we know that this is right now in part of our G. So we need to basically
Yeah, if you're on the outside, the only thing, you don't have access to the G directly. All you can
No.
do is call play game. So you can't, you can pass it functional options to change the output, for example.
So basically we need to...
But we're on the inside effectively because we have the G. So we can just, we can set G.output directly, can't we?
Yeah, so we can do this, for example. Output, and then it will be basically
Buff, isn't it?
of bytes.Buffer.
Yeah. Though in fact we can't set G.output because it's not exported.
Oh yes.
For reasons that we discussed earlier. So actually, what would you rather do? Would you rather just export that field so we can set it in tests and it doesn't matter if users want to set it, they can? Or alternatively, should we have new game take the same functional options so that we can set it from here and just pass them through from play game?
I would do this approach through the functional options, to be honest.
Yeah, okay,
because
let's try that.
then we behave more like an end user.
Yeah, and if you want to create a game that works a slightly different way, you can do that without having to just call play game and accept whatever we give you. So that's fine. So the logic of what we're saying is that we will be able to call lambda.newGame with output buff, isn't it?
With output, and output will be our buffer, so we need to set up this earlier.
And in fact, what we need is a pointer to buffer, so we can just create that right here. We can say ampersand bytes.Buffer. Great. So far, so good. New game doesn't take these yet, but we can do that.
Yeah.
And we don't have to write any new code as such. It's just, it lives in play game now, and we can move it into new game.
Play game. I want to lambda with output buffer. So new game.
Yeah, so right now new game doesn't take anything, but we can make it take.
We need to add parameters, right? So for options.
Yep. We can take a variadic of options.
So
very nice, just option.
It's predefined type.
Okay, so right now what we do is we just return a game literal directly, but we're not going to be able to do that anymore, are we? Because we're going to apply some of these options to the game before we return it.
Yeah.
So we're going to need to, we still want that literal, but we can just assign it to some variable, G, let's say. And then we can do the loop over the options, applying them to the G.
Okay.
Great. And we can cut and paste that loop from play game.
It's exactly the same here.
Yep. And we won't need it here, will we? Because we'll just pass opts straight through to new game because we call new game. So
and
G first.
Nicely abstracted, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So G first, then apply the options. We already return error, so that's okay. We just need to return an empty game, I suppose.
Yes. Okay, so we have here
The last thing is we just need to return that G. Great.
Yeah, so we can basically here this, we don't need this anymore because we have 5 functional options inside the new game, right? So now it's a matter that we need to actually instantiate the new game with our options.
That's right. Yeah, and there's just one tiny wrinkle here, which is that, you know, you might think, if you didn't know, that you can just pass opts straight through to new game, but that's not quite right, because when your function receives variadic options, they appear in your function as a slice. You know, the variable opts is in fact slice of option, you'll find, is its type, and that's not what new game takes, is it? It doesn't take a slice of option, it takes a variadic number of options. So we use this ... operator again, as you quite rightly did. I call this the unroll operator. You know, if you have a slice, but what you want is a bunch of variadic arguments, that's what it does. It unrolls that slice into a bunch of arguments again. So, you know, they came in as separate values, they got squashed into a slice, and then they got unrolled again. So the whole thing was perhaps a bit unnecessary, but nonetheless, that's just how it works. So that's very nice. So are we there? I think this file is okay. Tests still got some whammies.
We still have to refactor tests here.
Yeah, there's a bit of debris left around here, isn't there?
Okay, so we have this buffer lander with output. Okay. Display state. Yeah. Our got will be different, right? We need to.
Actually, that's okay, isn't it? We just passed in the buffer different way.
Oh, yes. That's true.
Test logic is the same. Now read thrust no longer takes anything, so that's fine.
Yes, so we need to delete.
We just need to with input and with output on this new game. Yeah, I like your scheme for doing it this way. I think this is better.
Input. And we will have.
Yeah, we construct input and output later on, so we'll need to move those up.
Yeah.
But we called them input and output. Probably logical.
And with output.
Yep.
Output.
It just reads really nicely, doesn't it? This is what I like about these things. I can remember reading Dave Cheney's blog post and just seeing code like this. You know, I was just like, how? How can you do that? How does this work? It's not really that complicated, is it? So, should we give them each their own line? That's probably nice, isn't it? You know, same way that we call them elsewhere, say, you know, lander with input on its own line, with output on its own line.
Ah, okay, yeah, right. So that's going to be easier too.
Because if it's more than 2, that's going to get to be a long line.
Ah.
Wonderful. So we must be close. There's a couple more red blobs in the mini-map.
Lander new game. Here we have as well. Display results. Okay, so we need to pass as well the same situation.
Yeah, apparently it's just called buff this time.
Yes.
And I've heard a lot of people say that it's kind of, can be a slightly frustrating experience.
Refactoring test code?
Well, that too, but also just trying to write your first ever bits of Go code, because it seems like nothing ever compiles, doesn't it? Whatever you do, it's just full of angry red underlines, and if you run it, you just get error after error, and people say, it seems like I'm just fixing one compile error, run the program, get a different error, fix that, repeat until you lose the will to live, sort of thing. And I just think, yes, like if you're experiencing that, well, that's okay. It's not something you're doing wrong. That's just actually how it works. The compiler is very strict compared to many languages. Python, Perl, Ruby, even PHP. Almost anything compiles as a valid program. It doesn't work, but that's the thing, isn't it? If you can get a Go program to compile, it often works, which is nice. So again, discipline feels painful when it's being applied to you, but it's it's good for you. It's like cold baths and a 10-mile run before breakfast. No one actually enjoys that, but it feels nice afterwards for sure.
It's like Bill Kennedy says that compiler loves you. At some point we will start appreciating this.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And they used to say about Unix that Unix is user friendly. It's just very choosy about who its friends are. And I think Go very much descends from the same philosophy, doesn't it? So that's great. Thank you for going through some of that pain on our behalf. So we're almost there. Just the same thing for display results here, isn't it? And then I think we can.
State. So our buffer. Rest of the buffer and input. No.
Great, yeah, and it's just with input, isn't it? Okay, fine. So I feel like we should be close to. Well, test play game won't pass yet because we don't know what our want is, but we soon will. If this test runs and fails, we should see what the output actually was.
Shall we try?
Let's try.